Hello, hello. I hope your day's been swell, and today is the first official episode of the Let's Worldbuild series that I'm starting here. So this episode, in its essence, is basically just going to be me explaining how my universe template works and then starting the process of getting the universe actually made. The universe that I'm going to create here for the rest of this series. So, yeah. I don't know how far I'm going to get with this, but we'll see. The hope in this episode, at least, is to get through the entirety of the universe creation. So that includes the basics of like force magic and the basic structure of the universe. So yeah, I may as well just get started right away. So the universe is going to live in here. Let's just create a new universe. A new folder. So in the alphabetical system, this is going to be universe K. And now we have a blank folder. Well, what am I supposed to put in this folder? Well, let's create a new note. No, come on, if I can type correctly. So this is going to be universe K, obviously. This is me showcasing the first time using my templates. So let's go into the templates folder. What would it be? It'd be natural place, and then universe template, and we got a whole bunch of stuff here, and just Control A, Control C that, and then bring it back into here. So Obsidian has a system where you can tag your notes so you can easily organize them, and so I like to. The very first thing that I do with any of these pages is that I rename the template tag into thing, because this is in fact a thing. And then I do any of these specific tags to this folder or this file. It's literally just universe K because that's all that has happened so far. Let's start with the general overview of this universe. I like to put a very basic description at the very top of the notes. So this is the universe. So what did I do here? This is how you create a link in Obsidian. So if I click on this, it will bring me to a separate page where I have a just general information on how universes work in my multiverse, and it has a list of all the other universes. So I'll just click on it. A lot of this stuff is going to be blocked out because, I don't want to reveal too much information, but as you can see, there's a list of universes here. So that's very useful. And actually, I need to add universe K to this since it has just been formed, and there it is. So now you can link back to universe K, and here we are again. So that's a very simple way to create links in Obsidian. It's just with this, you enclose the name of the note in double brackets, and that's that. It's done. This is the universe of my Let's Worldbuild series. I mean, yeah, honestly, a lot of my very basic descriptions are not any more than this, especially since I don't even really know what this is going to look like exactly yet, since we are just in the very beginning stages. So, this is probably something that I should have gone over in the previous episode, in episode 0, but, just some very basic Obsidian information. If you have £1 in front of a name of something, a name of like the section you're trying to title, it'll create a main header, and then the more hashtags you add, the smaller the header will be, and then you can also like minimize a whole bunch of these based off of what is under them. So, I can get rid of etymology, and then there's nothing else there, obviously. And as you can see, you can, in fact, link things within a title, which is really cool. And this is actually something about linking that I didn't mention earlier, which is that the name of the file must be first, and then you can shift, and then right above the enter key is a vertical bar if you have, I guess, an American keyboard. And then like directly after that, without spaces or anything, is the word that you want to appear in the place of the note title. So, for instance, if I want maybe to not capitalize the word universe, I can have the uncapitalized version there, and then it appears as uncapitalized. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the overview of all the sections that I have, and a lot of this is very similar to how I make my other notes, so a lot of this isn't unique to just universes. So, the first grand section is general. It is just the very general stuff that doesn't really belong anywhere else, just the very broad sweeping things. So the first little subsection is etymology, which you probably know what etymology means. It's the study of how names come about and stuff like that. So I use this as just like a generalization of listing out all the names that this place has in all the different languages that might appear in this universe, as well as explanations for how those names come about. Oh, and this is how you create a bulleted list. You just type a dash and then a space, and then there you go. There's a little dot there. It's just there. And so I'm just gonna say, like, this is called Universe Unvirus. I always type it Unvirus. I don't know why. Universe K, because it is the Kth universe I seriously started developing. Simple as that. And then I'm going to have a other names section, and I obviously won't fill this out yet because there's no other names, because I haven't made any languages yet. Far from making any languages, sadly. But it's ready to be filled in when it needs to be. Every single one of my notes will have this field, since there's a lot of people out there with a whole bunch of names. It's also a place for nicknames for a being. So yeah. And speaking of beings, there is a notable beings portion where, put all of the important people who live in this universe. There's also notable places and any notable stories that take place in this universe, which all of those are empty right now since there's nothing to be in there. So the next section is stats. A whole bunch of fun little stats to put in here. The first little subsection here is age, which is very straightforward, and I'm not going to fill this out yet since I don't know how old the universe will be by the time life comes about and by the time intelligence comes about. So I'm just going to leave that blank for now. Location. This is very interesting in the case of a universe because this will take place in grand reality. That is the name of my multiverse, as I said in the first episode, and no, I will not explain it. I'm just going to move on since that is the only greater location that it is in. So I'll move on to shape. What is the shape of this universe? What do I want the shape to look like? So in general, I want this universe to look similar, or at least, very recognizable to what our own universe looks like. So, just like a few little quirks that'll make things interesting. So let's say that the observable universe is spherical, just like our own universe, but the actual universe is toroidal. Actually, I guess this should be like a fourth dimensional toroid. I don't know if that's the correct term, but the basic idea is that if you go to the boundaries of the universe, you immediately appear on the other boundary on like the opposite side of the universe. So it's like if you've ever played the video game Asteroid, which I would be surprised if you have, since it's from like the 1970s or something like that. But if you've ever played that game, then you'll know that if you leave the game on one end of the screen, you just instantly appear on the other side. That's what I'm trying to say. If I find a better term for this, then I'll definitely retcon that and type that better term there. But for now, I think that's fine. So, dimensions. What are the dimensions of this universe going to be? The only relevant dimension, since at least in the observable universe, it is a sphere. So, also I just realized I spelled sphere wrong. It's kind of difficult to type because I have my microphone on a stand that is right in front of my keyboard because I am very low budget. So yeah, that's fun. Expect a lot of fun little typos. Oh boy. Really the only relevant value here is radius. What do I want the radius of this universe to be? I want it to be smaller than our own observable universe, I don't really know why, but I just want it to be smaller. And the current estimate for the radius of our observable universe is around 45 billion light years, I believe. And if you don't know what a light year is, it's just the distance that light travels in a single year, with light being the fastest thing in the known universe. So it is a extremely long distance. For comparison, the distance that light travels in 1 second, I believe, is equal to like many, many times the Earth's circumference. So 1 year's worth of that speed is a very large distance, many times larger than like the orbit of Uranus or whatever. I don't know why I used Uranus as an example, because Neptune's the farthest out, but okay. So I want it to be less than 45 billion light years. Let's just throw out a random value. 25.691. So that's 25.1 billion light years, not 25,000. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good dimension there. Mass. This is where I'm going to use the references folder here, where I have a whole bunch of Universe 0 references. Actually, I'm going to open this up in a new tab, and let's see. Here is the information for our universe as of right now in our history. You know, there's the age. We don't know these two. Okay, so it's 46.5 billion light years is the observable radius, and I should clarify that. Observable radius, 25.691 billion light years. And then, so the mass is, at the very least, this amount of ordinary matter. Let's copy that. Since we're halving that, I'll bring it down by power of 2, or by power of 10. The radius is halved. It's close enough to be halved, which means that the volume is decreased by 8 times. And so 10 times it's about approximately enough. So I think that's pretty good. Volume, this will require some calculation, and as with a lot of other stuff, these are sorts of details that are very erroneous, honestly, and I just do it because I like it. And in your own projects, I very much expect that you might not want to do this, so you can just skip through this if you want. So this is going to be 70,768 billion cubic light years. Density is a very simple equation. It's just mass divided by volume. So these are very large numbers that I'm dealing with. I'll just skip through the density for now. That's too thick of a calculation to warrant it, really. And I already have the mass and the volume, so. Oh, and I should probably explain why I'm using the term ordinary matter here when explaining the mass. And that's because in our own universe, there's theorized dark matter, which would make this value larger, since we do theorize that there's more dark matter than ordinary matter, and thus this needs to be clarified. So yeah, that's that. I am not actually sure whether I want there to be any dark matter in this universe, but dark matter is also a very good tool for world building if you want like mysterious stuff. Though there are a lot of more creative ways to go about it, obviously. So, and actually I could answer this question very soon on if I want any other kinds of matter than just ordinary matter. But as of right now, we get to this section, and this is a fun little section where, if you notice in the reference doc, the basic rules, it's basically just a list of all the forces. That's how I use it, at least. Rules, they do have a very precise definition, but I won't go into that now. For the purposes of this series, it's basically just a list of how the universe works on a very basic level. So, forces, basically. And that's how I'm going to use it functionally for this. So, let's just say all the typical forces from our universe exist here. So, gravity, I don't need to capitalize that, what am I doing? So, gravity, electromagnetism, and the weak and strong forces. So, yeah, I want all the basic forces to be the same, because it's just easier that way. And past this stuff, it gets into the magical stuff, which I honestly have not thought of yet. I have not conjured up exactly what the magic will look like, so I'm just going to do some quick brainstorming off recording, and I will get back to you. Alrighty dighty, so I've gotten done some brainstorming. It's actually the next day now, because it got a bit late last night, but I've done my brainstorming, and I've decided that I want the magic to look like color. I want a form of color magic. I'm not exactly sure what the exact details will be for that magic yet. Okay, so I'm just going to start typing stuff out then. So let's just say that color can be manipulated by life. And I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, and I'll actually create a separate page for that next episode. I've decided I'll make that the magic episode. So the reason why I want it to be manipulated by life in general and not just humans, or it wouldn't be humans, but sufficiently intelligent beings, is because I think it would be really cool to mix speculative biology with some magic, and having creatures that can manipulate color and use color for their advantage would be really cool. There are several properties that I want to have. I'll just list out some of the bigger ones here. Oh, and it's important to note that color itself does not affect the other forces. That's important to keep in mind, because we don't want this to be meddling with our very fundamental forces, because I don't want messy stuff to happen with that. I want to be able to base a lot of stuff on real science, and once you include some magical stuff that messes with the other forces, it gets messy. And I don't want to have to deal with that in this series, at least. Let's say that different colors can be absorbed and released. So if a creature places their hand on an object that has blue coloring on it, they can absorb it, literally leaching the color out of that object, turning the portions of it that he was holding gray. And then what I'm planning on being able to happen is that different colors can have different uses. And so maybe blue color allows for greater intelligence, or maybe greater strength, or something like that. Yeah, my mind is just flowing with ideas right now. This is sort of how my brainstorming process goes. I start with a very simple concept, and then I build on top of that. And by released, I just mean that once a creature has absorbed a color, they can release it onto a different object or back onto the same object. It doesn't really matter, which could be pretty useful for, visual purposes. Can create some very striking images that way. Very colorful scenes. Okay, so when a color is being held by a creature, it grants that creature abilities, with the strength of that ability being determined by how much of that color is being held. I still have yet to decide. I'm thinking of if I want it to be maybe also some more conventional types of magic, maybe I don't want flying, but maybe invisibility, stuff like that. I am considering making reflectivity a color, treating the surface of a mirror as a color that can be absorbed, and when you absorb it, the mirror goes gray, something like that, which I think would be really cool. And this will be the last thing that I include in this part for now, but mixes of different colors grant special mixes of abilities. And I want the colors to be balanced in a sense, maybe even cancel out if you have opposite ends of the spectrum, or opposite ends of the color wheel. I think that could be cool. This is a very interesting way to add some complexity in there. And now let's move on, scroll down a bit. And actually the magic part isn't really needed for this, since it's already right there. And actually, I'll just say that, so more details can be found in the color K page. So I'm specifying K here because I want to specify which universe it's for, just for, easy reference. So that's it for the magic. Let's move on to some basic matter. So this is going to be a boring section, in that it's going to echo the section immediately before, in that, let me just type it out real quick. So all the typical kinds of matter from our universe exist in this one, so atoms, protons, quarks, etc. I'm not going to be particularly creative on that front. And then I just want to specify, for clarity's sake, oh, come on, give me parentheses, including dark matter, if it really does exist. So just to cover all of my bases here. So yeah, and here's the quirk that I want to put in here, is that color energy is also a thing. This is the stored energy within creatures when they absorb color. And I don't know why I capitalized that, but when they absorb color. So the basic idea here is that if a creature has absorbed color, then they now have some internal energy that is like flowing through them and allowing them to perform magic. Maybe it can be spent whenever magic is being performed, or it can be released back in the form of the same color that it was absorbed as, something like that. I think that's a pretty cool idea. And the main reason for separating like this idea of energy and then the physical color itself is because I'm thinking of having it be possible that this form of like magical energy can be stored in an object, not necessarily in the form of color on the surface, so that I can have like extremely powerful magical objects, something like that. I think that would be cool. As you can probably tell, a lot of these details are in the very, very beginning stages, so it's very much not ironed out at all yet. So I'm just going to go to the last section of stats, which is expansion. And going to Universe 0, I basically just copied from Wikipedia, and I'm not going to include all of this, obviously. Let's just once more make it typical. So let's just say very similar to our universe, where expansion seems to be increasing overall. Something like that. It's not really that important because I'm not going to get to this level, most likely. And now the organism section. This section normally has a lot more details in it in other note documents. The reason why it's very bare and it doesn't have any subsections is because I'm keeping it reserved for universal organisms that, live and proliferate over the entirety of a whole universe. And those are very rare and understandably do not occur very often. For the purposes of this universe, I'm going to have it so that there are no universal organisms, just for simplicity's sake. That being said, though, however, here is a list of notable lesser organisms. I guess non-universal. There, that's a good term. So all of the big creatures, important creatures on the planet that I eventually make. So that is that done. Now, the civilization section is pretty big. It has a lot of stuff pertaining to like how civilizations interact with this object and how they represent it, how they tell tales about it, stuff like that, what they've built in it. This section is also common among a lot of the other notes. And for a universe specifically, this is for universal stuff. Since there's no civilizations yet that I've created, most of this is going to be left empty for now, except for a couple of fields. So for artificiality, this is basically like, is the universe artificial? Was the universe created by a being? And that's going to be no. It just naturally came into existence. Difficulty of travel, that is, how difficult it is for beings to be able to travel throughout the universe. So I want to say that due to the limitations of the speed of light, it is very difficult to travel large distances across the universe, which is the same as in our universe, seemingly at least. We're not exactly sure if the warp drives are possible or not, but in general, I want it to be very difficult to travel like universal distances. Level of technology, that's just how advanced civilization is in general across the universe, which I'm just going to leave blank. There are no intelligent beings yet, no cultures to have representation or legends, no one to harvest stuff, no civilizations to have connections across the universe, and then no structures. So that is that section over. And now the last section, which is history. And this is just the overarching history of everything. You see that there are really only a few fields here, which is whatever the creation story is, whatever major events happen, and this will just be like a simple list. Or if events are large enough to warrant their own separate sections, then they would have their own sections. Everything after creation won't have anything because, haven't gotten to these points yet. So I want the creation to be very similar to our own universe, as is the theme here, with a big bang and expansion until the present day. Actually, let me just put in a few more details. The formation of atoms and stars and galaxies follows the same path as in our reality as well, just with different overarching patterns and random nuances. And by this I mean that the general history is the same as in our universe, but with different galaxies, different planets, different galactic superclusters, stuff like that. Just different random patterns, just to clarify that it's not an exact copy of our universe. And obviously there are no major events, and there's nothing else to put here. So that is it for the note-taking portion of this episode. So yeah. And now I'm going to give you all a little surprise. So each episode I want to have at the very end a little snippet of prose, something like that, just to showcase whatever I've developed in that episode. Literally like a few paragraphs maybe. It's not going to be very long. They might end up being longer, but we'll see. For this one, I just wanted to make a really short snippet of Reliul journeying through this universe and commenting on its basic structure. So here that is. Space there was broad and expanding, with familiar matter and energy swirling and colliding into galaxies, star systems, and planets. Curiously enough, there was full possibility for humanity to develop there. But what intelligent life appeared never took on quite the same appearance as you all. You may be asking whether humanity is a common occurrence across grand reality. The answer, of course, is no. Humans are exceedingly rare, and never once do they appear in the exact same form, being more close approximations of each other. Enough distractions. The truly interesting part of this universe was not the specific structures, but the small difference with your own reality. One that threw intelligence into a far more different environment than the one your ancestors found themselves in. This was the ability for life to manipulate color itself. Vibrancy leached from things both great and poor, leaving them both a lifeless gray. All for the pursuit of that supposed key to legacy, that ever-corrupting force. Power.